Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Councillor Sam Forsyth, and I will be chairing this hearing of Subcommittee C of the Licensing and Public Protection Committee of Birmingham City Council. Before I begin, can we just I ask everyone to mute their microphones, please, for a moment to improve the sound quality while I outline some housekeeping matters and the procedure. Could I also ask that everybody turns off their cameras, with the exception of committee members, unless you are the person speaking. Committee members will have their cameras switched on throughout this hearing. Could I remind everybody, please, that everyone at today's meeting should have their mobile phones on silent, and could you please ensure as far as you can that you're in a room or environment which is free from any distractions or any unnecessary noise from any electrical gadgets or devices. Thank you. I'm speaking slowly and clearly so everybody can follow. It is vitally important, for what I hope are obvious reasons, that those attending this meeting and making representations are able to hear me and members of my subcommittee and officers. Any distractions brought to my attention could result in the meeting being suspended temporarily or to another date and time under the regulations for these types of meeting. Could I remind you and confirm that this is a public meeting and is therefore being live streamed on the City Council website for live or subsequent broadcast, so the general public can view it. As it is a public meeting, can I remind everybody that the press public may record and take photographs except where there are confidential or exempt items. Could I remind members, please, that they must declare all relevant pecuniary and other registrable interests arising from any business to be discussed at this meeting. Does anybody have any declarations to make? Thank you. No apologies were submitted for this meeting. Can we deal now, please, with the minutes of previous meetings? Could we note the public part of the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of July of this year at 10 a.m? Those minutes noted? Obliged. We also note the public parts of the minutes held on the 31st of August of this year at 10 a.m. Minutes noted?
Noted.
Can we also note, please, the public parts of the minutes held on the 21st of September of this year at 1 p.m?
Noted.
Can we confirm and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of October of this year at 10 a.m?
Agreed.
And can we confirm and sign the minutes held of the meeting on the 26th of October of this year at 10 a.m. as well?
Agreed, Chair.
And can we note the public parts of the minutes held on the 9th of November of this year at 10 a.m?
Agreed.
Thank you. Can I welcome all of you to this hearing in respect of an application for the District Marketplace 25 to 27 Alcester Road South, Kings Heath in Birmingham, B14 7JQ. As I've said, I'm Councillor Sam Forsyth and I'm chairing this meeting. Together with me are other members of the subcommittee, Councillor Zafar Iqbal and Good morning, and Councillor Pennywag. Good morning. Also present in the meeting are the following officers: Licensing Officer David Kennedy.
Good morning, Chair.
Committee Manager Katie Townsend.
Good morning, Chair.
And Committee Lawyer Joanne Swampali.
Good morning, Chair.
Could I ask all parties now to identify themselves, please? Firstly, the applicant, Andrew Sanders.
Good morning. The applicant isn't Andrew Sanders. I'm Robert Botkai. I'm the solicitor for the applicant. Andrew Sanders works in my team and did put his name on as the administrator of the process. I've also got with me today Kash Kira, who will put his camera now on and say hello, and he's from the applicant company itself. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name's Kashmir Kira, and I'm the applicant.
Good morning, Mr. Kira.
Good morning.
Next, can I ask those making representations, Thomas Lynch and Danny Lynch, if you could identify yourselves, please?
Good morning. My name's Danny Lynch, and I'll be objecting to the application.
Thank you. And Thomas Lynch?
I'll be honest here, I think he may be having problems joining, so I think it's just going to be myself today.
Thank you. If he does join us, I will identify him then at that stage. Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Can I ask if any persons wishing to make representations wishes to withdraw their representations at this stage of the hearing?
No.
Thank you. I'm now just going to outline some housekeeping matters and some of the procedure. I'm going to assume that all parties have read and understood the Licensing Committee's procedural rules sent out with a notice of today's hearing. Please note that given the nature of today's proceedings, I may at my discretion amend those procedural rules to reflect the fact that this meeting is taking place online. But I wish to assure you that any such amendments will not impact on any party's right to a fair hearing. We will be using the Microsoft chat function to communicate. Could I please invite all of you now to confirm that you have access to that chat facility by typing in your name now. Officers will also type in their job title. The meeting will not go ahead until everyone has done so.
Okay, Chair.
Thank you very much. Could I invite everyone to keep open that chat function for the duration of the meeting, please? Does anyone wish to raise any preliminary points at this stage? If so, could you indicate in the chat function? Thank you. In terms of procedure, this is the procedure that we will follow today. Firstly, the licensing officer, David Kennedy, will present the report. Then the applicant will be asked to present their case. We're asking if applications and submissions and representations could be kept to approximately 20 minutes, please. Then those making representations will be invited to present their case. Again, we're asking this be kept to approximately 20 minutes, please. Could I remind parties to speak as slowly and as clearly as they can? The officers are taking minutes by hand, and the meeting is also being live streamed. And I can see that Mr. Lynch, Thomas Lynch, has just joined us. Mr. Lynch, Thomas Lynch, could you just identify yourself, please?
Hello, my name's Thomas Lynch. I'm also objecting to the application. Sorry for the problems with my internet.
Thank you. Could I just ask you, unless you are the person speaking, please, if you could just mute your microphone and if you could turn your camera off until it's your opportunity to make your presentation. Thank you. Please note that members of the subcommittee will be able to ask questions at any stage, but will try to do so at the conclusion of each presentation. Cross-examination by the applicant and those making representations will not be permitted unless members consider it appropriate. When questions are raised by members of the subcommittee or those present, please do so by using the chat facility. If at any point you're having problems with your internet connection or having difficulties hearing, again, can you alert us as soon as possible, please, and use the chat function if you're able to do that. Could I also point out that occasionally it may be necessary for the subcommittee to take legal advice. At my discretion, I'll ask all parties to wait in this meeting whilst members and the relevant officers withdraw to take that legal advice using a separate meeting within Microsoft Teams. We'll then return to this meeting and continue. If at any stage this meeting goes into private session, the meeting manager will pause the live stream. Once the private part of the meeting is over, we will ask the meeting manager to confirm that the live stream has resumed before we continue. At the conclusion of the hearing, I will invite all parties to make a brief closing submissions. Can I stress that no decision will be taken until we have heard all of the evidence? At the decision-making stage, the members and the relevant officers will withdraw from this meeting to make that decision, and we will be in a separate meeting. We will then make our decision and everyone will be notified of that decision within 5 working days. I hope that's all reasonably straightforward. With that, could I ask the licensing officer, Mr. Kennedy, to present the report, please? Could I remind you to speak as slowly and as clearly as you can, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. District Marketplace Limited applied on the 6th of October 2022 for the grant of a premises licence for District Marketplace 25 to 27 Alcester Road South, Kings Heath, Birmingham, B14 7JQ. The purpose of the report before the committee today is to consider representations that have been made in respect of the application, which seeks to permit the sale of alcohol for consumption both on and off the premises to operate from 9 AM until 12 midnight Sunday, 9 AM until 11 PM Monday to Wednesday, and 9 AM until 1 AM Thursday to Saturday. To permit the provision of late night refreshment to operate both indoors and outdoors from 11 PM until 12:30 AM Sunday, 11 PM until 11:30 PM Monday to Wednesday, and 11 PM until 1:30 AM Thursday to Saturday. Premises to remain open to the public 7 AM until 12:30 AM Sunday, 7 AM until 11:30 PM Monday to Wednesday, and 9 AM until 1:30 AM Thursday to Saturday. Other dates and times are specified in the application form. 2 representations have been received from other persons, which are attached to Appendices 1 and 2. The application is at Appendix 3 and site location plans at Appendix 4. The applicant has submitted additional supporting documents which are published at pages 83 to 100 of the agenda pack. The person whose representation is at Appendix 2 has also submitted additional supporting documents which are published at pages 101 to 106 of the agenda pack. When carrying out its licensing functions, a licensing authority must have regard to Birmingham City Council's statement of licensing policy and the guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182 of the Act. The authority is also required to take such steps as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the 4 licensing objectives. The options available to the committee today are to grant the application, to reject the application, to grant the licence subject to conditions modified to such an extent as considered appropriate, exclude from the licence any of the licence of activities to which the application relates, and or to refuse to specify the person as the designated premises supervisor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Could I now ask the legal team for the applicant to make their submissions, please?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Excellent. Good morning again. My name is Robert Botkai. I'm the solicitor for the applicant, and thank you for hearing us today. Just a point, I did raise my hand, but I probably didn't hold it up for very long. I don't want to start with pedantry, but the Thomas and Danny, if I can call them by their first names, are representing Mrs. Lynch today. So the actual party who has made a representation is Mrs. Lynch, and so Danny and Thomas are perfectly entitled to speak to that representation, but they are not parties in their own right. I don't know whether Joanne wanted to confirm that so that we're all clear.
Mr. Watkai, we're aware of their standing. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're very excited to bring District Marketplace to Birmingham. This was formerly the Wetherspoon Pear Tree, the Pear Tree pub. Now, Wetherspoon's closed a year or so ago, and what would normally happen is that the license would have been transferred to whoever was taking over the premises. For reasons that we're not aware of, Wetherspoon actually surrendered their license. Now, if the license had been transferred to us, we would be sitting here in a position of having the same hours as Wetherspoon, the Pear Tree, and the same conditions, and we would have simply had to make a variation to tweak the conditions and the layout of the premises, and it's most unlikely that we would have had a hearing. So we're really here today because the license was surrendered, which has left us having to apply for a new license. That being the case, we looked at the Wetherspoon license and we've tried to replicate it where possible. So the hours that we have applied for are the same as the Wetherspoon license. Some of the conditions on the license were what I would call Wetherspoon specific and couldn't really apply to another operator. And so we've tweaked those conditions and we've tightened them up actually. But we were very careful to include the conditions which had clearly been agreed by Wetherspoons to protect the residents, particularly the Lynch family at the rear. So we didn't remove those conditions, we reinstated those conditions to make sure that we're operating to the same rules that Wetherspoon did. So what is District Marketplace? We've submitted a deck, if that's the right expression, a pack. So you should have that in your papers. So you will see that the photographs on here aren't intended to be an exact image of what this particular venue will be, but it gives you a flavour of, excuse the pun, of what we will be doing. So the District Marketplace will have some 6 restaurateurs that operate around a central area, and our customers will be able to come into the venue and they will be able to select. So if you have a group of say 4 people, one of them might fancy sushi, one of them might fancy a hamburger, and another pizza, another pasta, by way of example, and they can go to each of those restaurateurs around the central area, and they can select their food and they can come and join their friends and sit together in the central area. So it's very much a dining. The emphasis is on dining. There is obviously going to be alcohol as well, but the emphasis is very much more on the food delivery than. It's certainly not a Wetherspoon, if I can say that. It's not. Wetherspoon is very much a drink-led venue. We're not that. We're very much a food-led venue, so much lower emphasis on alcohol. The hours, as I say, and I won't repeat them because your licensing officer has read them out and they're in the papers. They are the same as the Wetherspoon license, so we're not asking for anything new there. In terms of the conditions, they are on pages 16 and 17. The page numbers. Sometimes I have different page numbers to the committee, but I hope that we're on the same page. And you'll see that we've added a door supervisor condition, so that there will be an SIA registered door supervisor engaged at premises from 9 p.m. to close of business on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. So we've added that as a condition. In terms of the outside area, and this is, I think, what we're really going to be talking about today, we're not seeking to license the outside area. We may well have limited tables and chairs outside, and I would say that the last 2 to 3 years has taught us of the importance of having some outside tables and chairs. It's been really vital to the survival of businesses, but most importantly, that is what customers will want to be able to use at the appropriate time. So we may well have some outdoor tables and chairs. We've said that they will be rendered unusable by 11 p.m, but we have, in discussion with the residents, agreed that can be reduced to 10 p.m. We're not intending to have people outside late at night. And you'll see there that we've repeated the conditions about the air conditioning units. That's a Wetherspoons condition. The access gate to the rear to be kept locked at certain times. Again, that was one of the rules that Wetherspoons agreed to, and the depositing of glass and bottles there was again a Wetherspoons condition. So we've agreed to all of the rules that Wetherspoons adhered to, but we like to think that because of the food-led nature of the business, that we're going to be even less of a disturbance to the residents, and we're bringing something new, fresh, and exciting to the area. Importantly, that there is no representation from the police. The police are your experts on crime and disorder, and they will have looked at this application. There's no representation. Likewise, there is no representation from your environmental health team, and they are your experts, or your noise team. They are your experts in terms of public nuisance. So, to the residents, there were 3 representations. The first is from Lucy Grimmett, and we engaged with her and explained the nature of the operation, and she has withdrawn her representation. Then there's John Turner, who we suspect didn't really understand the application just from the nature of the representation, that the opening, far too late, far too early, location unsuitable, too many pubs, cafes in the area. We would have liked the opportunity to explain to him that we're really replicating, but actually making it a bit tighter. So we're replicating what was already there, but he's not here today. And then Diane Lynch, who's made a representation, and that is on, I've got it as page number 4. I'm sorry, it's appendix 2. Now, the owner of the business is Cash Kira, who's here today with me, and he has engaged with Mrs. Lynch. We quite understand the concerns that the Lynch family have got. I've spoken to Thomas as well, and then I've had email exchanges with Danny. So we understand they lived behind the Wetherspoon, or the Mr. and Mrs. Lynch live behind the venue, and they are concerned that if we're using the outside space, that we could become a disturbance to them. We wish to work with them and to be neighbourly, and in fact, Cash has offered to rebuild. There's a fence at the back between the properties, and he has offered, and it's obviously separate to the license application, but he's offered to build a brick wall there and to apply some sort of acoustic measures, if possible, at his own expense. But Mrs. Lynch has said that her family have lived at the address for 50 years and have not had any problems with the businesses that have occupied this location. Wetherspoons had a set of rules which they kept to, and these included using the drive for deliveries and staff parking only, no music, the doors and windows at the back to be kept closed. And they kept to these rules, and they worked well, and they were good neighbours. Now, in terms of rules, we can only assume that this means the conditions of the license, which Wetherspoons kept to. And as I said, we have adopted the same rules, the same conditions on this license application, and we will keep to it. And we wish to keep in touch with Mrs. Lynch, and if she wishes, we can do that via Thomas and or Danny. So Mrs. Lynch read in the license application that food and drink was to be served outside at tables and seats. We haven't actually said that. We are not seeking to license the outside area. What we've said, we could have ignored the outside area altogether and not put any conditions there at all. That probably wouldn't have been in the best interest of the Lynch family. So we've gone a bit further by saying that if we are using that outside area for outside dining, first of all, there'll be no vertical drinking, so people can't stand outside and drink. They've got to be at tables and chairs. And then we've put a cut-off time. Well, we said 11 o'clock, but we will agree 10 p.m. So we could have ignored the outside space altogether because we're not seeking to license it. And lots of pubs are licensed so they have the premises licensed, and then anything outside a pub garden may be treated as off sale. So we've gone further than we needed to in terms of offering up some conditions, which said that the much later opening hours times would severely impact on people living on the road. We're not suggesting any later opening times or alcohol hours than was previously in the application. So we very much hope that we can build a relationship with the Lynch family, as it seems that Wetherspoons did. We expect to be good neighbours too. So Cash has already met with Mrs. Lynch and Thomas. I've engaged with Thomas on the telephone and with Danny by email. And it may be one of these situations. What I have found helpful in previous applications where residents are concerned is that you may feel it appropriate to include an obligation for us to meet with. We don't need this because we'll do it anyway. But if it helps for the first 12 months of the term of the license, we're very happy to have a condition which says that we will meet with them or invite them to a meeting on a quarterly basis. The reason I say 12 months is that when I've seen these conditions to be open-ended, they can be actually quite difficult where people just don't need the meetings anymore. So I think we understand the concerns, we understand the trepidation, and we could have a condition to that effect for the first 12 months of the license. So we're not in a community of impact area, just very briefly, because not everybody will know what that is. If it was in a community of impact area, we would have to demonstrate by way of evidence that we're not going to be adding any issues to the licensing objectives. It's the other way around here, and any representation needs to relate to the licensing objectives, and it needs to relate to this application. And indeed, for the Lynch family, they can expand on their representation, but they need to talk to the representation which has been put in by Mrs. Lynch. It's really good to hear that they have stated in their representation that they've had no issue with the Wetherspoons, and we believe that the district marketplace will have less impact than a traditional drink-led venue, that we're going to bring real enhancement to the area and bring what is currently a disused prominent building into community use. So this is where people can come and work. There will be workspaces. They will be able to have meetings. They will be able to dine. They'll be able to meet their friends and stay there to work for the day. The concept has proved, excuse me, popular elsewhere. So a real emphasis on quality food, working, excuse me, and collaboration space. I will just end by saying that, and I really say this for the benefit of the Lynch family, that the Licensing Act is quite a permissive piece of legislation that generally allows things to happen, but with what I describe as being quite a strong sting in the tail. So if we don't behave the way that we are saying we're going to behave, and if we do cause a disturbance to any of the residents, then I would hope that first of all they would come and speak to us. If they're not satisfied, then they have a route through the licensing officer, or indeed themselves, to seek a review of the license, and then they will be able to say, look, on this day this has happened, on this day that has happened, and the license holder has done nothing about it, and they haven't resolved it. We want you, the licensing committee, to take steps, and at that point you would be able to either revoke the license, suspend it, remove the designated premises supervisor, or impose more restrictive conditions, and that's the way that licensing works, and in most cases that works very well. But the important thing here really is engagement, and for us to be talking to each other, particularly during that first 12 months, to make sure that the Lynch family are comfortable with what we're doing. I know that they're going to, or they have mentioned cooking outside and food. That's nothing to do with the licensable activities, so I'm not going to address you on that. We are here today to consider the license application, and no more. Very happy to answer any other questions. Cash is here, who will talk very enthusiastically and describe the concept in more detail. If I've missed anything, or if you'd like to ask any questions, we're very happy to address those. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that all the submissions you'd like to make at this stage?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members? Councillor Wagg, Councillor Iqbal?
No, thank you, Chair.
I have no questions. Thank you. Now, could I ask those making representations if they could make their presentation, please? Now, Thomas and Danny Lynch, there are two of you. You have approximately 20 minutes. It's entirely up to you if you wish to divide that time between you, or you wish to nominate one of you.
So I'll, councillors, thanks for giving us the opportunity to talk to you today. I'll discuss it. My mother is over 80 years old. My apologies that she can't attend. As I'm pretty sure you're aware, you know, technology doesn't always sit well with the elderly, and sometimes, you know, that doesn't really help to get across her story, which is why myself and my brother are here today. As we've said, my mother, my father, and my brother Thomas live in that house. They've lived in that house for over 51 years. I was born a week before they moved into that house, and I spent the first 30 odd years of my life living in that house. So we've got a great emotional attachment to the house. You know, my mother, she's been a housewife, she's been a mother, and she's, you know, brought up myself, my brother, and my sister in that house, and you know, she considers it her home. You know, we talk about the you know, previous occupants of the building, and since I've lived, you know, since I was born, we've had several businesses who have worked out of that building. When we first moved in, there was a furniture store, and that drive, which was backing onto the shop, which is adjacent to our house, basically, you know, they used to use it for deliveries. Then the furniture store closed, and then it became a TSB bank, and the drive was used for cash deliveries and cash collections, and that was about it, and for staff parking. And then the Pear Tree came along. You know, the pub, as we said, was run by Wetherspoons. You know, the original license was purely for inside the pub, so it had limited impact to my mother and my family. You know, realistically, the yard, the drive area was used for storage of bins, it was used for storage of staff cars, and it was used for deliveries. You know, when we talk about no nuisance, and Mr. Botkay talks about, you know, environmental health not making a representation here, and, you know, they're the experts on noise pollution. The experts on noise pollution is my mother, whose bedroom overlooks that driveway. The experts on noise pollution in relation to this premises is my brother, whose bedroom overlooks that driveway. You know, and I find it slightly remiss that you know, we, you know, that isn't taken into account. When we talk about the Pear Tree, there was a period when the pear tree used that driveway for outside entertainment. Effectively, there were tables and chairs there. There were it was during the time of COVID, so there were extra there were extra reasons for them to do it. You know, the doors were open. There was many problems which happened when that happened, and my brother and my mother, they complained to councillors, they've complained to their MPs, you know, they've complained to environmental health, and ultimately, my apologies, and those complaints were listened to. You know, ultimately, my mother, as I said, she's in her 80s. And one of the things which doesn't come across, I think, in her letter, and, you know, Mr. Botkay mentioned that, you know, there were no issues with the pear tree. There were lots of issues with the pear tree. My mother suffered from stress, from anxiety, from lack of sleep, or from the noise caused by customers, quite literally 3 meters away from her bedroom. And I think, you know, I'd like to, and in my pack on the agenda, it's page 101. And on page 101, my brother has taken some photographs of the driveway, and he's taken some photographs from their bedrooms. And I think, you know, it's not really clear in the application, which Mr. Botkay has presented, how close this is to their bedrooms. And if you look at the page 101, you know, there is a picture from my brother's bedroom, and it overlooks the area which this applicant wants to use for effectively customers up until, you know, we've said 10 p.m. And at the end of the day, that's page 101. If you look at page 102, there are 2 further pictures. There's a picture from my mother's bedroom, and there's a picture which is from the front of the driveway, which shows how close these premises are to my family's house. And all of these things contributed to the noise and the nuisance which was caused by allowing people to drink outside in that venue.
Mr. Lynch, please forgive the interruption. Could I invite you, please, to direct your points that you wish to make to the license application that we're considering at the moment, please. So please feel free to make any comments that you wish about the license that we are considering at the moment.
Right. So if I understand correctly, I'm not a licensing lawyer, and I know we've got the solicitor on for the council. The objection we have is that we do not think the pub should be allowed to have anything outside which is in relation to customers. Yeah, the pear tree before, we were happy with it being used for deliveries. We were happy for it being used for storage of rubbish. We were happy for it being used with staff cars, etc. But ultimately, when customers go outside, and I know that we've discussed it earlier on with Mr. Botkay saying, you know, there will be no vertical drinking. I think the phrase he used was, but I'll tell you what will happen is there will be a lot of noise and nuisance, which is caused to my mother and my father and my brother. And that's a fact. Yeah. And Mr. Botkay, I know that, you know, as I said, I'm not a licensing lawyer, but when I look at it and when I look at the application, the main issue we have with the application is carry on marketplace. If you want to serve your people inside with your pizzas and your pastas and your sushis and everything else, I've got no problems with that. My mother's got no problems with that. My brother's got no problems with that. The problem we have is effectively the area next to our house is not suitable for entertainment and for customers to go outside. It quite literally is not. As you can see from the photographs, my mother and father's back garden, it's an old Victorian terraced house. And realistically, the back garden is very narrow. There used to be an old house next to it, but it got knocked down, which is why the drive is there. And it is quite literally, the garden is about 3 meters wide. If you look at the driveway that the applicant is talking about, And if you look at some of the in the plans in their deck, you know, there is mention of sticking 5 different containers in the back garden, in the driveway. You know, these containers will quite literally be a couple of meters from my mother's bedroom and my brother's bedroom. And whether or not the applicant seems to think, you know, I can build a wall, it's going to make no difference whatsoever to the noise and the nuisance which my family will suffer. You know, we've talked about, you know, the fact that, you know, it's good for Kings Heath. I agree it's good for Kings Heath, but the problem is keep it all indoors. Yeah. The nuisance factor comes down when things happen outside in that driveway with customers. My mother, you know, and Mr. Botkai said, you know, we never had any problems. My mother's a very polite woman, and my mother, you know, is engaged with Cash and people like that. And she won't say this to your face, but I know that whenever I ring my mother on a weekly basis, she tells me how much this worries her, and it tells me how much it stresses her out, and tells me how much it will just wreck her quality of life. And if that doesn't, you know, if that's not the definition of nuisance, I do not know what it is. And I know we're talking about an application, and I've looked at the application, I've read it together with my brother, I've gone through it. But the main thing, and you know, and Mr. Botkai's made a comment on there, this goes beyond the representation, this is not an expansion. As I've said to you, my apologies if my mother's not as forthright as I am, but unfortunately I deal with it from my family's perspective. And if you look at it, and if you look at it from the council's perspective and the councillors and the committee's perspective, it's a case of looking at those pictures. If you look at your back garden, if you look at your bedroom window, would you want all of that happening within a couple of meters away? And I'm pretty certain, I don't live in Birmingham anymore. I moved away 14, 15 years ago with work. But basically, I would not want this happening in my back garden. You know, I think I've probably said enough. Tom, is there anything you'd like to add? Is there anything I've missed out which Mum would like to sort of bring the committee to know about?
No, I think you covered all the points. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you.
So as I said, you know, we've read the application, we've read the you know, what the documents. You know, as I said, my mum is very, very polite. Yeah, and one of the things I'm going to tell her is if this gets approved, is that she made copious notes when Wetherspoons used that outside area. We made several complaints when we used when it was used as an outside area, and I will tell my mother not to hang back, because politeness gets you nowhere. And at the end of the day, it will make her poorly if this license is granted, and if this license is granted so that customers can go outside, because it will wreck her quality of life.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. If you could just take a moment, is there anything else that you wish to say to us at this stage? Are there any other representations that you wish to make at this stage?
Not at this moment in time, thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. I'm just going to deal with members' questions, and then I shall come back to Mr. Botkai.
Thank you.
Councillor Iqbal, do you have any questions?
I'm happy, Chair, to move forward. Thank you.
Councillor Wagg? Councillor Wagg, you're on mute. Councillor Wagg, I think you were in.
Not at this moment, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lynch, both Mr. Lynches.
No, Councillor, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity. As I said, I can only apologise that my mother's not here, you know, and hopefully we've explained, certainly from my point of view, I've explained what her concerns are.
So there's nothing further that you wish to add. There's no other submissions, any other points that you wish to make?
No, the only thing that I discussed it with the licensing staff was, we did originally submit all the emails with all the complaints we had with Wetherspoons. We did submit all the correspondence which we had.
I'm sorry, but I mean this.
Mr.
I've tried to
Botkai, if you'd like to wait,
Thank
please. Mr. Botkai,
Thank you.
please do not interject when somebody else is speaking. If you'd like to wait, then you'll have your opportunity. I'm just going to ask Mr. Lynch if there's anything else he wishes to say, and then we will come to you. Please wait.
Thank you, Councillor. And as I said, we have reams of emails where we've had problems, and we've got reams of emails from councillors, MPs, environmental health, licensing, and we did want to share them, but unfortunately, the problem we have is, unfortunately, Mr. Botkai is saying there's been no problems whatsoever.
Mr. Lynch, is there anything else you wish to add about this application that's being made? Thank you. I'm now going to ask, please, if the applicant's legal team would like to make any closing submissions. Mr. Botkai, thank you for your patience.
Thank you. And I really try not to interrupt, and I didn't mean any disrespect by that, but I was a bit concerned about the path. I did have discussions with your licensing officer yesterday, where we have a very clear written representation from Mrs. Lynch, which confirms that that the Wetherspoons kept to a set of rules, and they worked well, and they were good neighbours. To try and introduce something through her, for her sons to introduce a completely different story would not be an expansion of that representation. It becomes a complete U-turn, and can cause other could have other implications. That's why I put my camera on, so if I can just explain that. Really importantly, and Jay, you've asked the Lynches to focus on the application. We are not seeking a license for the outside area, and I think that's where perhaps there is a misunderstanding. Now, we could simply just use the outside area for tables and chairs without any license whatsoever for dining and for people to be outside. The only sort of point where the license comes into it is the off sales of alcohol, so that those people who may be sitting outside. This is a very small area. We don't even know to the extent to which it will be used. It's a very minor part of the venue, but we do want that little bit of flexibility for somebody to be able to sit outside, have a cup of coffee, have something to eat, and if they're so the only impact of this application on that area is actually that person can have a glass of wine or a beer with their meal. So it is not part of the licensed area. It is, and I think that's been misunderstood because we put conditions in the application, which we didn't need to, but we put the conditions in to restrict the use of that outside area. That doesn't make it a licensed area. So I know the concept is a little bit difficult for the residents. So there is this assumption that we're going to be doing all sorts of noisy things outside there, and that we're going to create a disturbance. We understand the concerns. We've had very good meetings with Mrs. Lynch, and we want those to continue. So we know the consequences if we do cause a nuisance, because there are numerous remedies open to our neighbours if we cause a nuisance, both outside of the licence and within the Licensing Act. We're pleased to hear that the family welcomes District Marketplace and is not actually opposing the grant of the licence as such. Their only concern appears to be the outside area, and the outside area is not part of the licence application, other than the conditions that we have offered up. I hope that's understood better now by Thomas and Dan than it was before the hearing took place today. Live hearings are better for us to be able to talk to residents. Zoom and Teams calls can be a little bit impersonal, But we would like to again offer up the condition to have regular meetings with the family, so that we can hear from them. How is it going? How have you been affected? Is there anything else that we can be doing to make to be neighbourly? So we'd ask you to grant the application as it is, very much along the lines of the previous licence, but with somewhat tighter conditions. Cash is here. If you had any questions about the operation, it doesn't seem that you do, but about the way that the venue will operate, the training, the number of local staff members that we're going to be having. It's going to be local staff. It's going to be local restaurateurs who are going to have the opportunity to trade from District Marketplace. As I started out, we're very excited to bring this concept to the area, and we very much hope to build on the relationship with the Lynch family. Cash, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just we thanks everyone for having us here today, and Thomas and Danny, fully understand the concerns, and this is why we, before anything else, we started talking to local people in the community, and we knocked the door ourselves without any prompting. So nobody prompted us to come and speak to your mum, Diane, and to your dad. We did that off our own back. I'm from the local area myself. I've been running businesses in around the local area. Background's convenience stores, so very much community led businesses, and we've held licenses, and we've held we've run pubs and restaurants in the past, and up to a very high standard in neighbourhood areas, and we've never had any problems or any issues. And when we have, we've talked to the neighbours directly and resolved those, and we've been very responsible licensees and community members. I don't live far from Kings Heath, and I've got family and friends that live in the area, and I think everyone's very excited about the opportunity for this marketplace. And just to expand on the concept as well, it is going to be a co-working space as well, so there's going to be a lot of professionals there. This is not going to be a typical Witherspoons type location where, as Robert said earlier, it's not going to be a wet-led location, and especially in the current climate where we are seeing a lot of venues close down and local restaurants coming under a lot of pressure. This is a collaborative space for local people to be able to come and work together within the Kings Heath area. So I just wanted to put that across essentially. So
thank you.
Thank you, Cash. If I could just conclude by if you are minded as a committee to consider any other conditions, I'd be grateful for the opportunity to discuss those conditions before the close of proceedings. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I thank everybody for attending today and making their various representations. I'm now going to ask everybody to leave this meeting, and the members, the committee lawyer and the committee manager, we will go into private session whilst we make our decision. All the parties will be notified of that decision of this subcommittee within 5 working days. Thank you.